Hello and welcome once again to Crazy Comics and Stories. It's me, your charming and delightful old Uncle Rat Bastard. And at the other end of the series of tubes and wires that we call the internets is Joe, Crazy Writer. How you doing today, Joe?
Yeah, we're all mature until someone pulls out the bubble wrap. Up, get freaky.
I prefer to get freaky with the cheese whiz.
Ooh, kinky boy.
Well, I'm a 90s guy. Come on.
Well, that's why your house smells vaguely of cheese.
No, it's why my house always smells like flannel.
Ugh.
Flannel and Nirvana CDs. Well, normally we start off with a whole bunch of jokes, but this is not going to be one of our happy, fun, shiny time episodes.
Nope.
This is not the ha-ha tickle party you are used to.
And it's not the episode we planned to do because
no,
it's just events are happening outside and we want to talk about them.
One of the original members of the bullpen, John Romita Sr, passed away this week at 93. He passed away quietly in his bed. 93 is a ripe old age. He retired at age 65, and we'll get into why he retired. But he had a long time with family. He worked with family. He knew how loved he was. And in a lot of ways, a lot of people talk about how Marvel wouldn't exist without Jack Kirby or Steve Ditko. I put John Romita in that category, even though he was not as creative as they were. He, as we talk about him, I want to sort of put him in the historical context he belongs in. Joe is going to go through some of the Wikipedia stuff.
Yep. He was born January 24th, 1930. He's best known for his work on Marvel Comics' The Amazing Spider-Man, for co-creating characters including Mary Jane Watson, The Punisher, Wolverine, Luke Cage. He's the father, of course, of John Romita Jr., who's also a comic book artist, and the husband of Virginia Romita, who for many years was Marvel's traffic manager. His first works were in 1949 as a ghostwriter for Timely Comics, which was a precursor to Marvel.
Ghost artist.
Yeah, where he was a ghost. Woo! Where he met editor-in-chief Stan Lee. In 1951, Romita began drawing horror, war, romance comics for Atlas Comics, previously Timely, and drew his first superhero work, a 1950s revival of Captain America. He worked exclusively for DC from 58 to 65 and was the artist for many of the romance comics. He also, he drew Beautiful Women, which is what he became later known for. He returned to Marvel in 1965, initially drawing Daredevil, and in 1966, when Steve Ditko left Marvel and left Spider-Man, Romita was chosen by Stan Lee as the new artist for The Amazing Spider-Man. Within a year of Romita becoming the Spider-Man artist, The Amazing Spider-Man rose from Marvel's second best-selling title to its top seller. He brought in a new romance style to Spider-Man comics that soon became the new house style for the character. In 1973, Romita was promoted to Marvel's art director and worked to help influence the look of Marvel Comics through the 70s into the 80s. Cory will get into his retirement, but he was inducted into the Will Eisner Comic Book Hall of Fame in 2002. That's kind of a quick. Again, you want to read more details, you can run to Wikipedia, but if you look, there's an interesting picture because you can see where Romita had based the design for Mary Jane Watson on actress Anne Margaret, which I didn't know. I just figured it was a ship that passed in John's night sometime.
John, when he got into comics, he was heavily influenced by Milton Caniff. He was a huge Milton Caniff fan of Chariot of the Pirates, Caniff's other work. And there's sort of a school of artists who, when they got into comics, used that as their art style. In the 30s, it was Alex Raymond. Then it was other artists. He was a Milton Caniff fan. And what he was best known for in the 50s was he was the artist on the Captain America revival. In the early 50s, Marvel revived their three main characters, Submariner, Human Torch, and Captain America. They did not last that long, but Romita was a huge Kirby fan and talked about how when he first started drawing Captain America, he really felt intimidated by Kirby's work, even though Kirby only did the first 10 issues. He did, like most people at Atlas, he did whatever they threw at him. And then he started working for DC as the Atlas work dried up. And then when the Atlas work completely dried up, he got typecast over at DC doing romance books. And it was good pay. You know, DC was one of the best-selling companies. They had good page rates. But you were typecast when you went to DC. If you did this kind of book, you couldn't do any other kind of book. Shelley Moldenoff talked about how, because he did humor comics, he had to ghost Bob Kane in order to do Batman stories. And John Romita, because he did romance books, they didn't bring him over to do any of the superhero stuff. He was with that editorial group. And if you were with one editorial group, you didn't work for the other editorial groups, which is a very weird thing that DC did through the 50s and 60s, and even into the 70s.
You go back to our episode where we talked about the Crisis on Infinite Earths. We talk a bit about it there because you had the groups didn't want to join in the crossover, and no one could force them to do it, which is how, when Crisis started to become such a great hit, oh, well, we want to jump in, but what can we do? Well, we'll have red skies in the background, hence the term, oh, yeah, red skies, where crossover really didn't deal with it. Just a sidebar if you want to hear more about the whole structure of DC at the time.
And it was also, the characters would cross over, but as we'll talk about in future podcasts and past podcasts, that doesn't mean that they were written the same way. When Superman was in World's Finest, it was edited by Mort Weisinger, so it was like the other Superman books, but Batman was nothing like what he was in the Julie Schwartz Batman books. And then the Julie Schwartz characters, Mort Weisinger wouldn't use them. You'd read Superman, they never brought in Green Lantern or the Flash or Hawkman or the Atom or any of that. And a lot of that went back to the 40s when many of the editors, there were two companies. There was a national periodical, and then there was All American. And even though they merged, the characters never really merged. So it's one of those things where editorial just kept everything separate. And as the romance books declined, they were adding more and more reprints because, hey, you don't have to pay anybody for a reprint. So Romita kind of saw that Marvel was starting to pick up again. And when he went over to Marvel, he was also looking for work doing advertising storyboards, things like that. But when he went to Marvel, he just wanted to ink. He didn't want to pencil anything, just wanted to ink because he felt he could do that on the side as he tried to break into advertising. And Stan, of course, said, "Sure, Johnny." Then Wally Wood left Daredevil, and he went to John Romita. Is like, "Oh crap, I don't have anybody to pencil Daredevil." And Romita didn't feel comfortable with Marvel's very kinetic style. So if you look at Romita's first issue of Daredevil, you'll see it was laid out by Kirby. And what Kirby did is he got tracing paper and laid out the story for Romita to follow. And they did that for a couple issues till Romita felt comfortable. Then Steve Ditko left Marvel. And there's some misconceptions about Ditko leaving Marvel, because there are some people who have gotten a reputation for, screw it, I'm leaving. Ditko was out of contract when he left. Same with Kirby. Their contract had expired, and they were working on a new contract and continued to work under the terms of the old contract, the old page rate and everything, but they weren't under contract anymore. And Stan was trying to work it out. They were trying to, and because Ditko didn't trust Stan, he tried to work directly with Martin Goodman, and Goodman was just, screw you, you take what you get, which is why Ditko eventually got fed up and left. And it's the same with Kirby. He was, there's a Fantastic Four cartoon, and there's all this stuff based on my work, and I should be getting royalties. When I went to court for you against Joe Simon over who owns Captain America, I was told I would start getting royalties for all the extracurricular stuff. And Martin Goodman said, yeah, I told you whatever I needed to in order to get you to testify. So Romita, on the other hand, was in the office a lot. He was very much an office guy, very much a company guy. And even though he was not the art director, he was the art director. One other thing that people don't talk about a whole lot is during the contract negotiations between Stan and Jack, Stan desperately wanted Jack Kirby to be the art director for Marvel. That way Kirby would be on salary. He would have benefits. He knew that Kirby had a daughter who needed a lot of medical care. And instead, Kirby preferred being freelance and moved to California, partly to get away from Marvel, and partly because the weather would be much better for his daughter. In New York, there's a lot of pollution in the air. California, back in the 60s, not much pollution. Boy, did that change. So Romita was the guy who was kind of in the office, touching up covers, touching up pages, doing art correction, and then they made it official once Martin Goodman was gone, because then it's okay, we're going to start hiring people. Roy's going to be editor-in-chief, Stan's going to be publisher, John, you're going to be art director. And you'll see during the 70s, even if Romita didn't draw the cover, he inked it, he corrected it, he did all the work on it. Joe, I want you to pull up the cover for Amazing Spider-Man 151. Because this is a really good example of what was done around Marvel at the time.
Dun, dun, dun.
And it's kind of a famous cover.
Yeah, I remember that one.
Okay, who drew that?
Mr. Romita Sr.
No. That
151?
That is a Gil Kane drawing.
You mean Marvel Database lied to me?
No, Romita inked it and did corrections on it. But that cover is a Gil Kane cover.
Yep.
And if you look hard enough, you can find the original.
Sorry, Marvel Database only gives credit to John.
Which is weird because I've seen the original art.
I'm not saying you haven't. I'm just saying. And that was the #1 pick on Google's. But yeah, it's a killer cover. That's a Spider-Man I grew up on.
Yeah. And if you look at Gil Kane's, it's a very Gil Kane cover. But Romita smoothed it out, made it look like all the other Marvel stuff at the time. And as art director, he would often, when a cover came in, Marie Severin would lay out a cover. Whoever the artist was would do the pencils and stuff, and then Romita or people in the office under Romita's direction would ink and do correction and sort of make it so it was something that Stan wouldn't go, what the hell's that? Because Romita knew what Stan liked. Then as Jim Shooter came in and there was more editorial at Marvel, Virginia Romita was hired in. She was sort of the traffic manager. And what that meant was...
There we go. The Grand Comic Book Database has it correct.
Yep.
Gil Kane, penciled, inks by John Romita, letters, Danny Crispy?
Yes. Danny Crispy did a lot of the cover lettering and stuff. Virginia Romita took over when John Putin passed away. And what traffic manager is she was the one who, here's your deadline, you'd put in your voucher, she would send the voucher over so you could get paid, all of the office-y type stuff that John Putin had done. When he passed away, Virginia came in. And then toward the end of the 70s, John Romita Jr. came in to work with his dad. At first, he did some work with John Romita on the Spider-Man strip, but then he started getting penciling jobs. And if you look at John Romita Jr.'s early penciling jobs, he's aping his dad because his dad taught him how to draw. When you go, every story I have read on Facebook, on Twitter, on blogs, Todd McFarlane even recorded a short video. They talk about how John Romita always had time to teach you stuff. You know, if you came into his office, whatever he was doing, he'd put it down, he'd greet you, he'd help you. I can't tell you how many artists talked about how they came in with a page or a cover or something, and they said, it's just not working, it's just not working. He'd grab that sheet of tracing paper, lay it on top, and show what you needed to do to fix it. Todd McFarlane talked about when he came over to Marvel, he was full of piss and vinegar and thought he knew everything. And then after a while, he started getting lost, and his art was getting, think about this. The editors at Marvel were like, sending his art back for corrections over and over. So he sat down with John Romita and said, what can I do to stop this? And he said, Romita gave me 4 to 5 things that you do when you're drawing a comic. And it changed his work. It changed his outlook on comics. And he still uses those things. And whenever he's helping a young artist, he points out those things. Now, Todd did not tell us what they were, but a lot of it is, make sure that the body looks dynamic. Make sure that you're leaving planes of things. On that Spider-Man 151 cover, you've got the divergent points where all the lines are going toward a divergent point. Spider-Man looks like he's in action. There's detail. There's stuff going on in the background, so it looks like it's exciting. Romita did this through the 70s, into the 80s, and then in the 90s, when Marvel had their huge cutbacks, he was like 3 months away from being 65. And he had this group, they were called Romita's Raiders. And what they were, Marvel was putting out more and more and more books. He and his team, they were usually young artists. He was teaching and training them how to do production. But when stuff came in, they would fix it. Oh, this costume's not right. They'd fix the costume. Oh, this cover needs to have this. They'd fix that. That's what they did. They basically went through doing art corrections. Sometimes they would be the ones to draw in the backgrounds. They would be the ones Vince Colletta had not inked everything. They'd go through and they'd ink it all, unless he'd erased it and they didn't know it was there. But there's all these stories like that. But in the 90s, when Marvel ran into financial difficulty, he had to fire all of his people. And Virginia had to fire a whole bunch of her staff too. And after they were done, and I've read this story, I've heard this story, I saw it in this wonderful interview in the Comics Journal. He said that after that, I didn't want to do that job anymore. I was just done. So I retired and I just did art, and I would do art, here and there. But much like when Stan had to fire a bunch of people, Stan never got over that. John Romita and his wife had to fire a bunch of people. People they'd just given raises to because their work was so good a few months before. If you look at a Marvel comic in the 70s, it smells like John Romita. In the 60s, it was Kirby and Ditko. In the 70s, it was Romita and Buscema. In the 80s, it was Buscema and both the Buscema boys. In the 90s, Marvel kind of went off track. But they had a solid house style through all that time, and that house style was John Romita. Another thing I find fascinating about John Romita, he says he was scared to take over Spider-Man because Spider-Man was such a good book and Ditko was such a unique artist. And when you go back and you read those early issues by Romita, he says he was trying to draw as much like Ditko as he could. He couldn't draw like Ditko if he was forced to at gunpoint. That John Romita romance style just blasts through the page. There's a little bit of the Gwen that Ditko drew. There's a little bit of the Harry Osborn, but he took these characters and he made them their own. And then even when Gil Kane took over on Spider-Man, Gil Kane was drawing the Romita characters. So I think we are at the point now, and I may be wrong, but the only two people left from Marvel in the 60s are Roy Thomas and Sal Buscema.
I think you're right. I can't think of anyone else.
Yeah. So.
And I gotta say, I was very pleased I was able to get a signature from John Romita Jr., not in person, or Senior. I got it on Web Spinner's Spider-Man #1 from 1999. One of the Dynamic Forces. He's got a drawing of Peter Parker, Gwen, and then he autographed it, 750 copies. I had a signed copy of some Marvel book. I don't think it was a Spider-Man that was signed by both Stan Lee and John Romita Sr. I'd won it off, I think it was a Heroes Initiative auction off of
He
eBay.
actually was on the board of the Hero Initiative.
That would explain how they probably got it, because it was CGC'd and everything. And I sold it way back, actually before Stan passed away, just because I didn't collect CGC, and I'm certainly not on the signature kick like I am now. And now, of course, it's just one of those, I almost wished I'd kept it. Now, compare that, because I've been watching, it's still happening on the social media. People are just talking amazing things about John Romita Jr. They're sharing what they have, either original sketches. Joe Thingvall showed him his Wonder Woman that he had done. People are showing original art, things like that. Another person passed away just right before John did. And this was artist, I want to make sure I get the name right, Ian McGinty. Yes. Another American comic artist, best known for his creator-owned comic, Welcome to Showside. He worked on Adventure Time, Bee and Puppy Cat, Invader Zim. Turns out I actually have his autograph on Ninjak comic he did for Valiant. He worked Z2 Comics, produced an animated pilot based on McGinty's creator-owned comic series, Welcome to Showside. He died June 8th at the age of 38 in Los Angeles. Another person who all I hear about is good things from him. So apparently just a super person, and another person is going to be missed. But there's also a darker side that's starting to pop out, because if you go just follow the hashtag or Google comics broke me, apparently Ian, and I don't know a lot about how he passed away, but he was working his ass off trying to make a headline, and I'm going off a tweet by Kendra Wells. She says, every post about Ian is, he was the nicest dude in the world. He encouraged me as a young artist. He was so funny and kind. And then inevitably, he worked so much. Kendra goes on and says he worked more than I thought possible, just a constant creative output. He loved comics so much, all he wanted to do was make art. And it's hard not to feel like the industry took advantage of that and exploited him. Nobody should be working themselves to death for the rates we are paid. Ian was the best of us. He should have made it to 40 and beyond. He should have had a lifelong career that enabled him to rest, to heal, and take care of himself. His death is a fucking shattering indictment of this comic industry, and I hope the publishers who paid him pennies know that. Maybe it's too optimistic to hope that the people in publishing who constantly undercut and underpay their artists will see this as a horrifying awakening. I hope they're paying attention. Ian's struggles were not unique to him. So many of my peers are breaking their bodies and their minds for the opportunity to make poverty wages with no health care. It's scary to think he won't be the first or last of us to leave so young. After that, the dam break open. People are talking about, well, we've talked about it somewhat in whenever we do the previews episode. You know, after Shock went bankrupt, owed hundreds of thousands of dollars to people. You have to wonder about some of these other publishers that don't seem to have anything. Mark Ellaby says, Boom paid me and my buddy $110 a page, split between us to do a regular show backup. That's everything from writing, art, colors, letters, between exchange rate, bake fees, tax, etc. Did they break me? Yeah. You know, another guy, I drew Lumberjanes for $80 a page. The most miserable experience of my life. I actually stopped reading some of these stories because they just got depressing. Chris Falango talks about Stan Lee Kids Media offered him $0 for all the rights to his self-published books, Weird Kids. They stipulated that I might be asked to do promo art and make changes to the books for free. Then they denied my request for first right of refusal to create any potential sequels of my own book. It's part of me got so pissed off. And Cory, this ain't about me, and I don't want you to think I'm making it about me, but I was like, why the fuck are we doing a previews episode every goddamn month? And I'm going through with a fine-tooth comb and trying to promote these small books, only to be found out that whoever's getting the money, it ain't the fucking creators. You and I talked about how we're kind of, I don't know, to support somebody on Kickstarter is expensive, especially the number of quality works that we want to.
And especially the number of people who will do a Kickstarter. And I'm not going to say they're Comicsgate people, but they're Comicsgate people. They'll do a Kickstarter, they'll raise a whole ton of money, and then they won't deliver your book for 2 or 3 years.
And so I obviously haven't run into that because most of the time the people I see barely fund their book. And again, it's my experience. But again, if you want to go to bleedingcool.com or just Google Comics Broke Me, and you will just see the tale after tale of just how shitty the comic industry is to people. You know, one guy, Dean D, I've accrued $50,000 in non-payments for publishers in the last 10 years. You know, and I hear about, even like Colleen Doran talked about her early work where people were trying to take the rights from her or you know, it's very, very distressing. And before I get to the flip side, Cory, what's your takeaway of this Comics Broke Me?
My first takeaway is, as usual, to think history.
Mm-hmm.
Gene Day, who started out with Dave Sim up in Canada, came down, started inking at Marvel, then did that beautiful run on Master of Kung Fu, then moved over to Star Wars and passed away before he was 40 of pneumonia. And I remember at the time in the Comics Journal, Doug Mensch, who worked with him on Master of Kung Fu, said Jim Shooter killed him. And then when you read and you talk to people who knew what it was, the page rates were pretty terrible. But he loved doing Master of Kung Fu. Now, in order to work at Marvel, he had to move from Canada to New York City. New York City, even in the late 70s, was not cheap to live in. And he was not a fast artist. So with his page rates, he wasn't making enough money to rent an apartment. There were times he would sleep at the Marvel offices on a couch because he had no place else to go. He was basically homeless. He would wake up, draw, and then crash on the couch. And I've talked in the past, companies do not want to run the heat and the air conditioning when, quote, nobody's there. So a lot of these office buildings would turn the heat down or they would turn off the air conditioning. And he got sick from overwork, eating poorly, smoking, being hunched over at that drawing table. Wally Wood talked about how he had to draw and draw and draw and draw and draw and draw, and he never got big money. And part of it was Wally himself, but part of it was the low page rates. And there was a time in the late 80s, early 90s, where people made ginormous amounts of money. Mike Manley talked about how, he drew Spider-Man, it was like Batman 500. He got $250,000, but he was smart enough to know it wouldn't last. And when he saw the sales start to fall apart, he hoofed it over to animation. And there were a lot of people who did that, but there were a lot of people who didn't. And there were a lot of people who, worked on indie books, hoping that would be their break. Either somebody would, some movie company would buy the rights, like the Men in Black thing, or it would get picked up by Scholastic, like Bone did, or they would get hired by Marvel and DC to do Spider-Man or Superman or something that had a high page rate. But then you hear about editors at Marvel in the 2000s who talked about how, we have the big name writer who got a check for $100K for this book, which is more than I would make in 3 years. And that's an editor living in New York in 2000. And on the indies, it's worse. We talk about how IDW has been hovering on the brink of bankruptcy for a while. Page rates, if you're not a name creator, page rates have not changed. You get reprint fees, which you never used to get. But let's say that you did your work back before then. That's why we have the Hero Initiative. And then one of the things that DC used to do, if your character was used in a movie, Paul Levitz would make sure they cut you a check. Len Wein said he made more money off creating Lucius Fox from his appearances in the Dark Knight trilogy than he made from creating Wolverine. Gary Conway says he hasn't seen one penny from his creation of the Punisher. And on and on and on. Steve Gerber, long court fight about his rights on Howard the Duck because he had a deal in place when Howard the Duck became a newspaper strip. He got the newspaper strip deal and Marvel reneged on it. And if you think that this only happens to indie guys, remember, Marvel gave Stan Lee a lifetime contract and then cut it when they went into bankruptcy. He was guaranteed a certain amount for the rest of his life. And then when bankruptcy, it's, nope, you get nothing.
Now, on the flip side of the coin, the lessons learned. I think it's a problem almost in any industry. My old partner, Pat Gruber, still working in the banking industry, but he knows sooner or later someone's going to come in, do his job that's younger, and be paid less for it. There's a constant race to the bottom. It doesn't have to be that way. Talk to any of the Image Boys. I mean, what they did was astounding. Talk to Brian Polito, who's made a wonderful living with Lady Death pretty much on Kickstarter. And another person, Bill Tucci, with She. And I think we could probably end this with him because this is good advice for anybody. And again, you want to go back to podcasts Cory and I have talked ad nauseum about if we were self-publishing comics, and that was the key. And I was always like, even if you're a regular working for one of the big guys, still promote your book. But Bill writes, the comics broke me out of poverty 30 years ago. It was able to give his family an income. He was able to befriend his heroes, meet the most interesting people, travel the world, and he gives free advice. Comics is very competitive. It's rare for anyone to attain the deserved status of Greg Capullo or Scott Snyder working for Marvel or DC Comics. You must take charge of your own destiny, your own life, and that of your own creations. Learn to create and publish your own IPs. Don't ever waste your talent on corporations who are worth billions of dollars, yet who deem you so insignificant that they issue a heinous penciled down order to rob you of your livelihood after comic shop closed down for a few weeks during a pandemic. There are thousands of resources, and those who have come before you can attest to you in your quest to independence. Billy says, I can tell you from experience, there's no greater career satisfaction than to have someone hand you a copy of your IP and thank you for creating it. So many creative heroes have changed our world. Veterans Denny O'Neil, Dave Cochran, Herb Trimp, Russ Heath, the list goes on and on, all suffered financial health hardships. Despite their contributions and during their darkest hours, Marvel and DC Comics abandoned them, left them with nothing. The moral Bill saying, you want to publish your own creations. Start with a webcomic, do crowdfunding. The fans are out there waiting for something great. Give it to them by giving it your all. It's worth it. Again, someone at the top, I was there at the beginning. The only reason as a comic store I got on board with She is because I noticed, hey, I have 20 out of 300 people ordering this through, I think it was Advanced Comics at the time. I doubled my order and She hit and exploded. There's been times
now,
where...
can I push back on that a little bit?
You may.
Because She had two things that really helped it out. Wizard Magazine and Joe Quesada.
Yeah.
Because She was one of those books that Wizard Magazine said, oh, gonna be hot, gonna be super, super hot. They gave Bill Tucci covers. They gave him tons of coverage inside. They pushed him as the hot artist. He never really had to work his way up. Steve Pugh, friend of mine on Facebook, drew Saint of Killers, has drawn comics forever. So like 20 years on, I've never bitched about this, but those Comicsgate guys comparing their bullshit to jobbing artist experience. I was drawing Saint of Killers at night over at my mom's. Dad had just passed away. Every now and then I could hear her crying from her bedroom, but those bills needed paying. They'd have fired me if I was late, and it would have made the books returnable. I don't know. Some people have it worse.
Well, I think I like Tony Isabella, creator of Black Lightning. He gets no respect from DC. You know, I would love to see him take care of the character, but we talk about it constantly. All these old creators that are just ignored because they went out and they found somebody cheaper that'll work harder, work for less, work against impossible deadlines.
And
that was a wonderful thing that Nick did. He would find these guys who were forgotten out in the comic world and bring them to the MCBA shows and let them know that they were loved. I still maintain, like I said, though, I had no effing clue what she was, despite Wizards push and everything. The only reason I ordered it is because my customers did. Why they ordered it? Well, you'd have to ask all 20 of them. Because again, remember, this is the beginning of me owning the comic store. So I wasn't really hep on what Wizard was pushing, although we certainly did later.
And part of it is the business acumen of the artists. Artists are not business people. But because comics is freelance, you have to be your own business manager. You have to be booking your gigs. You have to be doing your project management to make sure you're meeting all your deadlines, paying your taxes, taking care of all of the other things around that. And I'm going to talk about history. The comic people who work in comics will always undercut each other because it is a cutthroat world with a low number of jobs available. Back in the late 60s, a lot of the writers who had been working for DC since the 40s and knew people who worked in Hollywood and saw that Superman had gotten a TV show and a stage play and was going to have cartoons, and Batman had gotten a TV show and had a cartoon, and there were superhero cartoons all over the major networks. They said, we're going to make a union. And they were all of them fired immediately. Soon as they brought up a union, they were fired.
Well, even in that book we talked about, was it two podcasts ago about Jack Kirby? He didn't start making real money till he went into animation.
Well, that's part true and part not. He had the highest page rates. And one of the things that they don't talk about in any of the Kirby books, except Evanier has said that he will talk about it, Kirby was making bank at Marvel, but he lost a lot of his money in real estate.
Oh, no, they covered that.
He invested in real estate, and he lost it all. Now, when he started working in animation, it's not just that he got paid better. He had benefits. He had health, he had dental, he had retirement, because that's what the writers are striking for now. The writers are striking for, hey, we're not in our last deal, streaming wasn't part of it. You need to be sharing the money with us. And also, we want protection against you going to these AI programs to write these shows. Lois and Clark is on the CW. It got renewed, but one of the things they said is to get that renewal, you need to get rid of the entire supporting cast, except for the guy who plays Superman, the guy who plays Lois Lane. Everybody else will be guest stars. They could be on a certain number of episodes. That happened with, what was the TV show, Bob Hart's Era something? It's a top 10 comedy on CBS. They did the same thing. They said, hey, if you want another season, you have too many regulars. You need to cut them down so that they're guest stars rather than being on every episode. Maybe they'll be on every third episode. They're cutting costs. Marvel and DC, they're squeezing as much money as they can out of things. But Guardians of the Galaxy, 1 week of that movie, the first one, in release, made more money than every Guardians of the Galaxy comic ever printed for all of eternity. And that movie would not exist if not for Keith Giffen, Dan Abnett, and Andy Lanning saying, hey, we're going to put together a new cosmic group of books. Let's start it through this Annihilation. Now, there are some people who, Rob Liefeld talks about how with the Deadpool movies, he gets a piece of it. Because that was at a time when comics were making a ton of money and they needed hot creators, so hot creators could get good deals. But guess what? Those times are over. Rob Liefeld bought his parents a house with the money he made off X-Force #1. Nobody's buying a house with the royalties of any comic coming out now.
And I think we even talked about it way back when all of a sudden Disney was like, hey, guess what? We own all the Star Wars novels. We don't have to pay out anything. And they were like, writers are, wait a minute.
And they had to fight because what it was, your contract was with Lucas.
Yeah.
When we bought it, those contracts are null and void. This is work for hire.
How many creators do we know personally that? How come you don't do comics? Oh, well, I make better money in commercial art.
Or Angel Medina makes more money just doing commissions than he could ever make doing a regular comic. Same for Adam Hughes. Talk all you want about, I wish Adam Hughes would do another comic. Well, when Steven Spielberg's paying you $100,000 to do a painting of Indiana Jones,
or even
which am I going to do? Am I going to do a cover for Justice League, or am I going to do a painting for $100K? Guess what, kids?
Our own buddy Dan Wiesemeyer, who, by the way, if you're not friends with Dan, he got tickets to go to the red carpet affair for the Indiana Jones movie. The pictures and videos he took are amazing. If nothing else, to see like 25 different guys all dressed as Indiana Jones with their fedoras on is great. But he showed me somewhere in my vast accumulation of crap, I have a bunch of Star Wars folders. Why? Well, there's nothing about them. These are just the folders that showed up at Target. Dan said what he did is, I don't know, and Dan is unusual because he's an extremely fast creator. He made a bunch of these futuristic borders, sent them off to Lucas, and they used them in the folders that they put out that fall. He said, I made enough money, put a down payment on a house just for a quick weekend job like that. Why he doesn't do comic art as much. He doesn't have to, although he does have that cover coming up, which we talked about. So yeah, there's money in being an artist. It's just not necessarily comic industry unless you're able to make a property, your own property, that can make you some money.
And even then, for every there are hundreds of books like Science Dog or Hexware or what is that fantasy series that I was reading that I really liked, but the sales were so poor they had to end it. I can't even think of it. But back in the 90s, Very Vicky. Yeah. I put together my run of Very Vicky. You know what they're doing now? They're doing young adult books for Disney. Serena Valentino, who did Gloom Cookie and Nightmares and Fairy Tales, she's writing the villain books for Disney. And she's very open about comics treated me poorly and they didn't pay me. And whenever you have a small number of jobs, a whole bunch of people who want into it, there's always going to be somebody who they'll do it for less. They'll do it for less. They'll do it for less. And part of that is you have to look at yourself as a business. David Campiti, who runs Glass House Graphics, he was the publisher at Innovation. He is now an art agent, and he will tell stories about unprofessional artists till the cows come home. But if you're a professional artist who meets your deadlines, who follows what the client wants, he can get you work constantly. He's an agent. That's where Mike Deodato came from. That's where a lot of the South American artists come from. He works with Filipino artists. He works with Spanish artists. And he will talk about how, there will be people who come in and he'll say, all right, I need this many pages. It pays this much. And they'll flat out tell him, that's 4 times as much as I was making drawing for, this tiny company. Well, Campiti has a lot of corporate, he's got a lot of corporate connections. There are corporations who, we want comic style art, or we want art for a presentation we're doing, for a company retreat we're having, for business meeting we're having, or a presentation we're doing to try and get a new client. You have to look at your art as a business. You're not in it to become famous. If all you want to do is draw Plastic Man, you could probably get to do that, but you're also probably not going to get paid very well. And I think it's important for people to go into comics as an artist or a writer or a colorist or a letterer or any creative venture with their eyes open. We have 100 years of stories of people getting screwed over in comics, music, in books, in magazines, in TV, in theater, on and on and on and on and on, because they just want to be a creator, or they just want to be famous. They don't say, this is my job. I treat it like a job. One of the reasons Stephen King is so successful is because, unlike a lot of other writers, when he started out, he was a teacher, and then when he got home, he would write for 4 hours a night, and he would send his stories to any place that was accepting stories. And back then, he was very lucky in that men's magazines would accept, 4,000 to 10,000 word stories. But to this day, he sits down at 8 o'clock and he writes till noon. Then he has lunch. And then at 1 o'clock till 5 o'clock, he edits. It's a job. He treats it like a job. He punches in like it's a job. I'm not saying you have to do that, but you do have to treat it like a job. And if you're not going to pay someone to be your agent or pay someone to take care of the business stuff, you've got to learn how to do that too. Conventions are a hell of a lot of fun, but they're business events. And
you have to decide if you're going to make money at it. We talked about, help me with his last name, Doug
Peskevich.
Yes. He talked about, I like going, but for the expense on some of the cons, he's not going to make any money. There's no reason to go.
And also, you need to treat it like it's a company function. If you go there and dress wacky and act a fool and, make an ass of yourself, that's going to get to every editor in comics. Comics are small. It will get to every editor in comics within a month. Hey, I saw art by Joe Brony. Yeah, except he was panting after this cosplayer the whole weekend. Was barely at his table, was hitting on her all the time. Guy's not serious. Oh, well, if he's doing that at conventions, he's probably not going to meet his deadlines. Or, even worse, well, if he's going to act like that, that's an HR nightmare. Last thing I need is an HR nightmare. Last thing I need, I've got enough shit to deal with deadlines and budgets and et cetera, to have somebody who HR is going to come to me and go, yeah, we found out that this person is stalking somebody. You know, you got to treat it like it's a job. I would not want to break into comics. And I've talked in the past where back in the 80s when I was getting ready to leave college, I sent letters. Hey, how do you break in? How do you break in? How do you break in? And when I sent pitches constantly, some of them got picked up by Rich Buckler, who then his company went under and he went back to Marvel and never called me. But they said, well, to get in comics as a writer, you really need to move to New York, work as an assistant editor. That way you start networking and making connections, and you know what books are running late, and you know what books they need stories for. Look at Scott Lobdell. I think his story of how he broke into comics is probably one of the best. He lived in New York. He walked by, he would go to Marvel's offices every day and drop off an 8-page script of some obscure character. Every day. Boom. Every day. Boom. Because that's when they had Marvel Comics Presents. Here's a Shamrock story. Here's an Arabian Nights story. Here's an Abomination story. And in the end, it didn't matter if they were good or not. They knew he could deliver the stuff on time. He has since parlayed that into working in movies because he got to a point where it's like, yeah, comics aren't going to pay me as much as creating a TV show for the Sci-Fi Channel will, or writing a movie, writing a horror movie, or this or that. Are people going to get screwed by comics? Of course they are. There's not a lot of money sloshing around. And shit runs downhill. And the further downhill the shit runs, the less of it there is. Your owner is going to make the most. Then your office people, they're going to have salaries because you're not going to be able to get somebody to work in the office unless they're getting a salary. Then the editor, they're going to get a salary too. And then you've got the creative people. Well, our budget is for all of these people above you. Whatever's left, that's the budget we're going to use to hire people. Am I pissing on your dreams? I hope not, but I sure hope you go in with your eyes open. And even if you do, and another thing that Bill Tucci had going for him is he got into comics when it was real easy to self-publish. Diamond and Capitol would accept anything that looked semi-professional. Now, you got to go through hoops. We get all of these small publishers, but when's the last time you saw a self-published comic? It's been a long, long time.
Yeah. And you do have tools out there to help. We're one of them. Hey, we love doing reviews. We love promoting you. So if you are inspiring, Cory, tell them how they can get a hold of us.
You can email us at solitairerosenetwork@gmail.com. Matter of fact, we have an email right here. Travis emailed us.
Again, thank you.
Some things came to mind during this previous episode, and I wanted to bring this up now because I heard or read Frank Thorne saying Dynamite never paid him for any of his Red Sonja reprints. I'd have to track down that interview for proof. If true, it's another negative point for Dynamite. Guess what? All of his stuff was done work for hire for Marvel. He did not have reprint fees. That was not part of the work for hire contract. Plus, when Red Sonja went to Dynamite, all the work went over there too, but they don't have to pay royalties because that was a contract he had with Marvel. Same thing happened when all the Dark Horse Star Wars stuff went over to Marvel. Or the Conan stuff going to Titan. Your contract is with the company that commissions the work if you're working on something the company owns. If that moves somewhere else, I really doubt that Larry Hama got paid for the reprints on the G.I. Joe stuff that he did for Marvel in the 80s.
Did Travis have a recommendation we missed?
He had a few here.
Because we like that too. I always say, we look at what catches our eye. We want to hear what you guys like.
See, Darth Vader, Black, White, and Red. I'm getting the single issues. I hoped it would be more horror themed, like how Darth Vader had the best scene in Rogue One. A true villain. It's decent though. A neat looking comic you missed. Paul Bunyan, Invention of an American Legend by Noah Van Scriver. I love Noah Van Scriver's work. I really do. He is nothing like his brother. We talked about Fumetti. Flaming Carrot had a photo issue once. I do vaguely remember that. And then the last one, Deathmate.
I'm keeping it together because
it'd be funny if the two of you signed a bunch of Deathmates for Joe to sell at the next convention to table at. I have a better idea, Joe.
Wait a minute. You're trying to collect all the Deathmate. What are you going to do? Like drop them off at my doorstep and watch me get dizzy and heave again?
I say we sign them, and that is our Joe prize.
You get a Deathmate issue.
You get a Deathmate issue signed by us.
I do want to mention, we talked about the Ghost Rider Wolverine Weapons of Vengeance that's coming out. That's a local creator. I believe it's Ben Percy. Because somebody pointed that out at, I believe, Minnesota Comic Exchange. Hey, support their local guy. His book's coming out. And, of course, we talked about it because of the crazy Frank Miller cover, which looks to be orderable. It doesn't look like it's incentive cover. So that's the one I ordered.
We also got an email through your eBay from Captain Billy.
Yep. Captain Billy says, hi, just so you know, because I was talking why my make an offer listings. I've been sending them out like crazy and I haven't gotten anything back, which is kind of disappointing because you'd like to think if you were interested. But just so you know, eBay changed their policy with make an offer listings. You have to register a credit card with eBay in order to make an offer with the MAO tab, make an offer. I never store my credit card numbers on any mega corporation website because those businesses are always broken into and millions of numbers are stolen in a blink. So if you're making offer sales are suddenly slow, that's why. Love your show. Love when Cory recounts 50 years of comic history off the top of his head, just like you did this podcast. Keep up the good work. And of course.
And when you let me know that, I put a post up on Facebook. The only reason I have all this in my brain, my parents didn't throw away my comics, and my mother was going to college when I was in junior high and high school, and she would take me to the library where she was going to college at Bradley University. And I would go, oh, I want to read this, but they had a nice little section with all the comics history books, and I devoured those, read them over and over and over and over until they were a part of me, plus all of the stuff that I've read and through the years. I still remember when I roommate Danny Callahan, when I would get my shipment of comics, first thing I'd read is Amazing Heroes. And he would go, why are you reading that first? You've got all these comics and you read the Marvel Age crap first. And I said, no, it's not just telling me what's coming out. They have interviews with people. They have they have articles on different heroes. They have articles about different artists. I want to know the history. And there are some people who like that. It's like with wrestling. Some people want to know the history of pro wrestling. Some just want to watch it when it's on. I did not become, I'm in my late 50s now. I have not become one of those people who, I'm 50. Guess it's time to start watching World War II documentaries. No, I'm doing comics. Speaking of history, Joe, you don't want the companies knowing your web history, do you?
Are you kidding? I don't want you knowing my web history. I mean, just because I'm sitting here doing this podcast with no pants on.
Then you should pay attention to our sponsor. Our newest sponsor is NordVPN. Let's be honest, if you're out on the internet, you need a VPN to protect you. There's all sorts of things going on the internet where people can track you. You could accidentally download a keylogger, all sorts of things. NordVPN gives the best security possible. It has a password manager which generates complex passwords, syncs across all your devices, stores your notes and credit card information. It also gives you 10 gigabytes of private cloud storage, secure files that backs up your data automatically. But the main thing it gives you is peace of mind. It gives you peace of mind when you're out on the internet, when you're streaming, when you're playing games, when you're listening to podcasts like this one. It gives you safety anywhere at any time. It protects your online activity. You get full access to all content. And if you use the link go.nordvpn.net sh3ku, it'll take you to where you can get a great deal for a 1-month plan, a 2-year plan, a 1-year plan. They are our newest sponsor. We're happy to have them. And if you would like to sponsor something here at any of the podcasts on the Solitaire Rose Network, you can. Just email me, solitairerosenetwork@gmail.com. Thanks. Plus, I keep busy while doing all these podcasts. The Solitaire Rose Radio Network is currently on a pause, basically because COVID-19 has made it so that I have to work a lot of extra hours at both jobs. But you can still go and listen to my other podcasts. Now, you're probably listening to Crazy Comics and Stories, which is the main podcast. But on this same feed, KRAYZCOMIX, is Solitaire Rose Radio, the solo radio podcast that I do. I've done interviews, I've done short stories, I've done all sorts of things, and you can get to it right here on this same feed. I also do a podcast called Novelcast, where I take the novels I've written and turn them into free audiobooks. That's over at novels.solitairerose.com. Dangerous Dan Moore and I, and of course Wolfie B. Bad, give you bad advice over at badadvice.solitairerose.com. You send in your questions, and we give you the aforementioned bad advice. And then myself and Adam Vermillion from For the Love of Comics do the Fantastic Forecast at fantasticforecast.solitairerose.com, where we go through the issues of the Fantastic Four, 4 issues at a time, to give the plot and commentary on each issue. That's not all. Yes, I'm crazy. I still, over at pwinsiderelite.com, every week on Wednesday, do a recap of the latest episode of AEW Dynamite. I write up what happened, and then myself and Anthony Pyrus will do an audio. Now, you can only listen to the audio, if you remember, at pwinsiderelite.com, and if you're a wrestling fan, you should be, where we then break down the episode, talk about what we liked, what we didn't like, give it a grade, and let you know if you should have watched that episode. Those are the other podcasts here at the Solitaire Rose Radio Network. Thanks. And now, Joe, it's something we didn't have time to do last week, but we do this week, and that is retro reviews. Joe, do you have an old comic that you've read?
I do. Let me crack it out of its. Listen. Oh, crack it out of its thing here. Okay, are you ready, Cory?
Of course.
All right, let's see. First Egyptian. Who was that lady I saw you with last night? Second Egyptian. That was no lady. That was my mummy. Speaking of mother, can I go out to play? Yes, daughter, but not with the little boys. They're too rough. But Ma, if I find a nice, smooth little boy, can I play with him? Let's see. Let's keep going.
What is this?
Let's see. Bill says, what's the best way to teach a girl to swim? Bob, first you put your left arm around her waist, and then you gently take her right hand and, Bill, she's my sister. Oh, well, in that case, push her off the dock. Johnny, said the teacher, why don't you wash your face?
From?
I can't see what you had for breakfast this morning. What did I have, teacher? Eggs. You're wrong, teacher. That was yesterday. All right. I'll switch a few pages here. Let's see.
No.
But this is from Johnny Garson. Mystery is a blind date. explain the birds and bees to your young son and then overhearing him tell the little girl next door, guess what? You're going to have to be a bee. Mystery is a blind date, wearing a topless bathing suit and having a man walk up to you and say, nice day today, sir. Misery is a blind date, not having any money when the representative comes to your house selling mafia cookies. Misery is a blind date is discovering your deodorant is giving you bad breath. Putting on your underarm deodorant, it turns out to be your dog's flea and tick spray. Misery is a blind date. A sexy girl dropping her handkerchief, and when you bend over to pick it up, your toupee falls off.
Whatever comic this is, I need to avoid it at all costs.
Why, Cory, this is Groovy from Marvel Comics, or actually Atlas magazines, all the way back from 1968. We talked about Groovy before. They had, 3-4 issues? And I figured, you know what? I'm going to pick out the one I got on the eBays. I think I'd just read it to you. And since there are no ads, just more, it's basically just full of jokes and cartoons and stuff. Like this one, my sister's awfully lucky, little Bobby said to his friend. Why? She went to a party last night and they played a game where the boys had to kiss the girls or else pay her a box of chocolates. Well, how lucky was your sister? Well, she came home with 10 boxes of chocolates.
There were a bunch of magazines like that would have like one panel gags and jokes and stuff. Yeah. And they were really big in the 50s, 60s, and into the 70s. And, when I read the Carlton Companion, oh man, did they publish a lot of those.
I'm trying to figure out how many, because this was done by Marvels. And even Atomic Avenue says this is a strange one, especially for Marvel Comics, who at the time was trying new things and reaching out to new audiences with comic books not Brand Echh was the one that parodied their own book. Groovy featured, air quotes, hip single panel gags, the kind you'd find later on in magazines like National Lampoon, not as raunchy. Trying to get a more sophisticated audience, Groovy is one of Marvel's few comics at the time did not feature the Comic Code seal of approval.
Now, is it comic size or magazine size?
Comic size.
Huh.
I want to take one more look here in the Grand Comic Base to try to figure out how many issues there were.
By the way, all that Misery is a Blind Date by Johnny Carson, he put out a number of books like that.
Oh, really?
I did not know about until I bought, somebody had on eBay, a big box of Mad paperbacks. And I was on a binge where I wanted them, and they had one of those in there, and it's basically the Happiness is a Warm Puppy had become huge seller, so Carson just packaged up a bunch of jokes as Misery is a Blind Date, and it's an old 60s joke book.
That could be why they put it right on the cover, because you're looking at the cover and it's got a few gags, and in the bottom corner, Misery is a Blind Date by Johnny Carson. So that was probably the pickup. And then, of course, they go Freak Out Funnies, Mama and the Papas, Bob Dylan, The Monkees, Dick Smothers. They did 3 comics of these. So it's not a huge run. It obviously might not have sell very well. But there you go, Cory. Now you're groovy.
I was never groovy.
I could tell because you were groaning during it. Even I had to admit some of those were bad.
So, World's Finest Comics, for most of its existence, was a Superman-Batman book. However, about 1971, it was 1970, they decided to switch things up. So Brave and the Bold had become a Batman team-up book, and World Finest became a Superman team-up book. I will be reviewing issue 199 from December of 1970, which was a second part of a Superman Flash race. It is written by Denny O'Neil, drawn by Dick Dillon and Joe Giala, edited by Julie Schwartz. Often have the mighty Superman and the incredible Flash performed awesome deeds, but none so awesome as this, a race around 2 vast galaxies to counteract the time-disrupting effects of the faster-than-light Arkanoids. While newshound Jimmy Olsen, imprisoned 2,000 years in the past, is about to die in a hail of Roman arrows. Hands on, because from here forward, our story moves almost blindingly quick as our heroes follow them down the astonishing perils as they meet in a desperate race to save time. So our cliffhanger was that Jimmy Olsen was going to be executed by Roman soldiers for being a witch. And as they shoot the arrows at him, he shifts forward in time to the Spanish Inquisition, and the same thing happens. He actually shows up in his pajamas in Torquemada's courtroom. So Jimmy Olsen's just getting bounced around in time. Why Jimmy Olsen, and why, well, because, it's Jimmy Olsen. And what it is, if Superman and Flash don't stop the Arkanoids, time is going to start getting weird, and it'll be happening to people. And the Green Lantern Guardians are helping Superman and Flash. They've given Flash his special ring, not a Green Lantern ring, but a special ring so that he can run in space without oxygen. Superman, who's flying, no, Superman's running in space, even though he can fly. And what it is, we're not really told what the Arkanoids are, just that they are this alien race who can mess with time, and the only way to beat them is for Superman and Flash to race. We get scenes of Superman and Flash trying to stop meteoroids from crashing into them. We get them running through space over and over again. We get Superman running too close to a red sun, of course. We also find that they've gotten to the far side of the universe where the barrier between the Phantom Zone and our reality is weak. So they get captured by Crew L, Jack Sir, General Zod, and Professor Vacox. And from here, it's very much kind of a standard Superman story where they're under a red sun. They have to figure out how to escape. It's very Julie Schwartz puzzle story, but it gets really weird at one point. They're on the planet of the red sun. Flash's legs are broken. Superman is all beat up because of the red sun. There is a counting gadget over the entrance to the machine that the Arkanauts are using to disrupt the time stream. Superman and Flash have to crawl to the machine, and Flash is the one who's able to get inside and pull the lever, which destroys the Arkanauts' machine. In space, the robotic Arkanauts slow stop and are unable to exist at sublight velocity. They disintegrate. Order is restored to the stream of time. In medieval Spain, Jimmy cheats the executioner and flashes forward to his own arrow. The Roman soldier drifts back to the camp which he was snatched from. On Oa, the immortal guardians breathe a heavy sigh of relief. The red sun becomes a yellow sun. Superman puts everybody back in the Phantom Zone. And that's it. This was a terrible story. It was terrible.
How does he tell it was when you mix the two up?
Well, both of them have the same gimmick where the Guardians show up and go, hey, you two have to compete against each other in something. And I'd read 5 of them in a row, which you should never do for 60s and 70s DC, because if you read a number of issues in a row, they're all the same story. It's basically, okay, here's our gimmick, here's our villain. Superman and Flash have to race. Why? Because reasons.
Reasons.
Jimmy Olsen is involved because it's either Jimmy Olsen or Lois Lane who has to be in peril, even though through the whole story, Superman never knows about Jimmy Olsen's peril. He doesn't know that Jimmy Olsen's bouncing around in time. No, he just, well, I've got to solve this problem. And it's a super gimmick ending where we spend 2 pages of Superman and Flash crawling toward the building to win the race. So in this Superman Flash race, the Flash wins. But it's got all the stupid shit you expect from a 60s Superman story. You got a red sun. You've got Jimmy Olsen in trouble. You've got the Phantom Zone villains. You've got villains that they don't even bother drawing what the Arkanoids look like. And then all they have to do is pull a lever and, oh, we've solved the problem. Even though the Arkanoids are able to mess with time across the entire universe. This is the same Denny O'Neil who wrote the Green Lantern, Green Arrow stuff, Joe. This is the same Denny O'Neil who wrote all those fantastic Batman stories in the 70s and 90s.
To get it out of his system back then.
This really feels like it was Denny O'Neil came in for an assignment. Julie Schwartz said, all right, here's your story. Go write it. The art, I don't hate Dick Dillon as much as other people do, but boy, no one looks like they're actually running. The Flash, when he's drawn to run, his chest is stuck out, his head is leaning back, his arms are akimbo. It looks more like he's being thrown into the top turnbuckle in a wrestling match rather than running. And it's really clear as you look through the art, Dick Dillon has never seen a human being run in his life. The Guardians are just there because, well, we need some explanation for why this shit's happening. Every time I read stories like this, I go, this is why Marvel won the sales war. On the buy, borrow, and ignore, this is an ignore. They put these out in a trade paperback a few years ago. I have yet to read one that's any good. And Superman only, Batman remained a team-up book till it ended with issue 200. Pretty soon, World's Finest went back to the Batman-Superman team, and it's got to be because these are just awful. Now, Julie Schwartz did a Superman team-up book in the 80s with DC Comics Presents that was much better. I don't know why this is so bad. The other thing is, because it was 1970, Julie Schwartz was not the Superman editor. That was Mort Weisinger until 1971. So I wonder if this was, okay, the Superman book sales are starting to fall. Let's see if Julie Schwartz could do his magic. Let's give him World's Finest and see what he does with it. And what he did, he loaded it up with his characters. Flash, Green Lantern, the science-based heroes. He had Denny O'Neil writing it, who Denny O'Neil was also writing Justice League. Dick Dillon was drawing it, who was also drawing Justice League, and Justice League sold well at the time. But this is a flat-out ignore. Joe, it's time for my favorite part of the show.
The end?
No, not where I celebrate National Bourbon Day again. That was yesterday. Ooh. It was a very happy day.
Hey.
No, it's freaking and geeking. Joe, what are you freaking on?
All right. I have a couple retractions. I don't think it was it last week? No, 2 podcasts ago. I bitched uncharacteristically about Fantastic Four and Amazing Spider-Man. And while what I said is probably still true, I will say in the latest Fantastic Four, which I believe issue 7?
Yes.
Okay, and I got actually issue 8 staring at me. I haven't read it yet, so maybe that's why. Okay, Maria Hill is up to something, which could explain why she fucked around with the Fantastic Four in issue 6. So my apologies to Ryan North. You got my attention on it. Oh, we may revisit it if I'm not happy. Okay, you talked a bit about, was it Amazing Spider-Man? Oh, I got him confused now. Which one was the one where it was 25 where he found out what Peter did that was so bad
Yes.
And then 26, spoiler alert, is the one where Ms. Marvel dies.
Yes.
Okay. I enjoyed that issue. Totally didn't see it coming. I mean, I was like, I forgot she was going to die when that guy put the spear through what looked like Mary Jane. And I was like, oh my God. And then what I didn't like about it, and again, it is very much spoiler territory, which I rarely do, but I'm pissed. What the hell with the two kids?
Yeah, I
With
still
the,
do not understand that.
I don't get that. What, you know, and again, I thought it was bogus. I accepted why they kind of found these kids in the weird realm and they adopted them, but then they just disappeared for no reason. Whatever, dudes. Again, next issue maybe, but ick. Let's see. And now I gotta find all where my windows went. I have a lot of beef about Facebook. Although David Boyle, comic artist, activist, he said Facebook deleted my photos. 3,000 plus photos, friends, family, all but about 50 are gone. He reported it, and their FAQ said, sometimes your content can be deleted due to technical issues. We apologize for the convenience. And he's like, I don't think they're coming back. And he did report that more of them have come back. But I've been actually slowly backing up everything because you get the Facebook memories and things like that where all these photos pop up. I've been copying them onto a hard drive and then backing it up because the way Facebook will restrict you, and again, I think I'm on strike 3 and I don't even understand the first 2. And the last one was because I made a joke about nuking my house in order for Chris to get rid of all my comic books and Facebook. That goes against community standards. There's no effing way they had a community standards. It took 2 minutes for them to say, oh, we read your appeal, you're denied. So, and now I think the other thing is once you're on their radar, you're going to get pinged again. There was a creator who did a book called Boobs. And again, it was a Kickstarter. I'll be getting her boobs, hopefully fairly quick. But I made the comment, everybody's talking boobs, boobs, boobs all over. And I put the things, I can't wait your boobs in your hand. Oh, that's against community standards. And I'm like, what the some guy just said a similar comment, not as witty as mine. His is up, mine got flagged. So, and then I think about my uncle Tom Corbett, who twice had 2 different Facebook pages. Again, background, liberal guy, but he's like Cory. He's the liberal that can back up his stuff because while you sit and you read all these reports that the news talking on, he was the guy for 20 years wrote the reports. But he's also very open-minded. He will talk to anybody. Rarely blocked people. Well, unfortunately, he got on the bad side of someone on the right, and enough people reported him. His first account got restricted and deleted. So he had a backup account, and boom, same assholes went after him there. He's banned from Facebook again. Other than, you're talking literally, his whole account's gone. Everything he wrote, everything he did, all the pictures, whatever, just gone. Facebook can do that to you any moment they fucking feel like it because they are not a government entity. They're a private industry. You sign up for their terms. Just be aware. Most of my photos, if I put them on Facebook, they're probably coming from another source, but there are a few that probably aren't. Just beware. That's all I got, Cory. What you freaking on?
There was another death in comics, somebody who was not very well known, but if you knew him, you loved his stuff. Josh Quagmire. No, that's not his real name. passed away. One of my friends actually is the person who drove him to the hospital. One of my friends on Facebook is the person who drove him to the hospital. He passed away very quietly of a heart attack while he was at the VA. Before he passed, he set someone up to take over his art. If you read Cutie Bunny during the 80s, you know his art. I did not know he ghosted for tons of artists in the 80s and 90s. Trina Robbins said that he ghosted for her on California Girls at Marvel. And there were other artists who talked about it. He's been doing web strips since the late 90s. So if you just look for Josh Quagmire on the fire-breathing Google machine, there's his official website, which is cutiebunny.com. It has links to all of the web strips he does, also all of the merchandise that still sells. You can still get it. I had been emailing him back and forth for about a year on a commission, and the thing was he no longer drew on paper. And I noticed it was taking him longer to get back to me. He had no idea how old he was. He was in his 70s. No idea his real name. I guess at conventions, he would go to conventions, but he would not table. He would have someone else run his table. He was very adamant about remaining anonymous. I loved his work. It was unique. It was funny. He was part of the people who did anthropomorphic comics in the 80s, much like Sasaki, who did Usagi Yojimbo, or the people who did Albedo, or Ben Dunn with his Ninja High School and other stuff like that. He never really got to be a huge artist, but he did a lot of work. And there until about April of 2021, he would draw a calendar page for us every month. So you could get all of that. Just a damn shame. His stuff was really, really good. Beautiful drawings. And kind of his sense of humor always reminded me a lot of Sam and Max. That same sort of non sequitur, dripping with pop culture references, except Josh Quagmire really liked older stuff. Oh my gosh, did he have On the Road jokes? You know, the old film series with Bob Hope and Bing Crosby. Oh, if you'd seen those movies, he was riffing on those almost every comic he did. Just a damn shame. Kind of wish I'd have, pushed him a little harder to get that commission. He said he'd given up drawing on paper back in the 90s. He much preferred drawing on tablets and stuff. So next thing and from now on, my geekings are not going to be, big deals. Joe and I talked, 3 weeks ago, about unfinished books. If I ever get a house big enough where I can sort all of my comics, I imagine I will have 5 long boxes of comics that are just unfinished. And how many times now with Netflix and Hulu and all of these where it's, here's the series, ends on a cliffhanger. No ending. There are video games that have cliffhangers. No new video game comes out. I really, really, really hate that as a consumer, as a reader, as a TV watcher, to the point where there are certain creators who, if they're doing a book, I'll wait till it's done. Oh, why? Because it probably isn't going to be done. I don't have time in my life anymore to read half a story. If the story's not done, I don't care. On Netflix, I will check and see, does the season end on a cliffhanger? If it does, nope, not watching it till it's done. Why? Because too many series on Netflix, too many series on Hulu, too many series on network TV. oh, it's a cliffhanger, and then it's never, ever, ever resolved. Even if, I don't mind if it's okay. One of the things about the original CSI, they ended their last season on a cliffhanger, but it was popular enough that they were able to go, yeah, can we do a TV movie to end this? And CBS okayed it. And it was, wow, when's the last time somebody did a TV movie on network TV? Because network TV movies are now on Hallmark and all the other channels that really old people watch. And then the last thing I'm geeking on, every time I step outside, Joe, it smells like poutine and beavers.
Good one, eh?
Because you know how a couple of weeks ago New York was getting all the Canadian smoke? Well, the wind has shifted, and now it's coming to Minnesota.
It's back.
Yesterday was awful. Yesterday, I stepped outside, and it smelled like there was a forest fire right down the street. Today was better, but on my little weather app, it says, oh, it's going to be like that for the next few weeks. Great. To somebody with asthma, that's awesome. Glad I kept on my masks. Joe, what are you geeking on?
Let's see. My eBay feedback is surpassed 6,700. So I am very proud of that because unlike other people, I did mine one at a time individually. I wasn't drop shipping. I didn't have like tons of people doing it. Every single one I did myself. And I'm still going strong. And I've actually, like I said, I've got 2 places you can go. eBay itself, Krayz. On Facebook, I've got my own page now, Crazy Comics and Stuff. Not to be confused with Crazy Comics and Stories. This is Crazy, Krayz, Comics and Stuff. And I always post, hey, what I've done. Like today, I put up a bunch of half issues from Wizard. Speaking of Wizard, where you send away and get a issue. They have pretty much sold. And that was before I even got to the podcast. So I'll be putting up the rest of them probably tomorrow. Speaking of signed books, I mentioned I had the one by John Romita Sr. I've actually picked up a couple. I've been actually continuing. Aforementioned guy, Ian, I've got the Ninjak that I think he did the cover. So I'll have to look on that. I picked up a Gambit, his own miniseries. If you remember that when it came out.
Oh, yeah.
Howard Mackey, Lee Weeks signed the cover. So I like that. I picked up 2, 3, and 4 of the Astonishing X-Men back during the Age of Apocalypse that were all signed by Tim Townsend, who did the inking. Of course, driving me nuts. I don't have our number 1. And then from, where did I get this? Well, you can Google Ric Flair, codename Ric Flair, a comic book from Scout. I got one signed by the man himself. Woo! It's got one of those certificate of authenticity, the witness protection program from SpenceLOA.com. So I know I've got a bathrobe somewhere, his robe that he wore signed. Not him, it's a replica, but the comic's more fun. And there's other ones too. I had to decide which comic I wanted to go with, so you can go there and check it out. Watching wise, my wife and I binged through 100 Years of Warner Brothers, a documentary on Max, formerly HBO Max. I don't want you to think I'm looking at porn when Cory talks.
Oh, that's Skinamax.
Oh, okay. What was it? I got to go back and listen to our ads. Anyways, Warner Brothers reaching back in its past, celebrating a century of entertainment in a new 4-part documentary. Morgan Freeman narrated it. And I was explaining to my wife, you really, really have to watch this because they move fast and furious. And what I love about it is they not only cover movies, but in the bottom corner, they have a little blurb saying what movie it's from. So not only you might be going, oh, that scene, yes. Some of the things you'll discover, like, and Cory might even know. Let's find out. Ask the Strode. Cory?
Ooh, let me get my thinking cap on.
All right. Go ahead, pull the pin on your thinking grenade.
It's for a shiny new dime.
Why? Wow, this one's not so shiny. It's been run over. It's almost like a piece of art. Why are there no Rin Tin Tin movies available?
Hmm.
Now, if you had watched 100 Years of Warner Brothers, you would know the answer.
I have not. I did watch the documentaries they had on TCM, and they had clips. But I would imagine they were silent. They were cheap. Most of the almost 80% of all silent movies are gone. They just are gone.
But in this case, it was even more tragic. There was you kind of hit it. They were stored on nitrate.
Okay, yeah.
There was a fire in the Warner Brother lot. All those films are gone. The clips you see are things that survived or came from other sources. All that stuff is gone. The silent era, at least at Warner Brothers. The other stuff, like you said, it's nitrate. You open it up, it evaporates. So very sad.
And it's super flammable.
Oh gosh, yeah. I mean, the warehouses involved, though, if I remember this, and again, this went through quick because I was kind of shocked. They weren't even directly involved in the fire. They just got hot and boom.
Yeah.
So anyways,
that happened to a lot of movies from that era. And it's one of the reasons why there's so much talk about film restoration. The few copies of early films we have left, they're doing everything they can because so much of this stuff is gone, even into the sound era. You know, the movies of the 30s. And if it wasn't with the studio, there were a lot of movies where, okay, we've run it in all the theaters that we're connected to, but it's done. Screw it. They talk about this on a lot of different movie-related shows I watch.
Oh, yeah. And this is 4 parts. It goes through a lot. Some of the stuff I had to stop and pause. Like I explained to Chris, they were talking about how Superman was one of the movies that saved them. And then I stopped and explained, yeah, well, here's what happened behind the scenes. You know, Joe and Jerry didn't get butt kissed. They were shamed by Neil Adams and publicity to pay them some type of pension.
Yeah, they got an annuity.
Yeah, definitely worth watching. Our episodes, we went through them over the course of 2 nights. Lots of fun. And then we're also like, Chris was astonished. Like, you never seen All the President's Men? No. You know, I've never seen The Exorcist either, and she has. So it was a lot of fun. Star Trek Strange New Worlds is on. Oh, I watched it right before the podcast started. And, I'm so glad. It's been so long since we've had a decent Star Trek. I've been going through Star Trek Prodigy, catching up, and it's fun. And I rerun bits and pieces. But to have a brand new one was just amazing. Afterwards, I recommend everybody go over to Trek Culture on the YouTubes and look for the ups and downs because Sean, I believe his name's, great. Never mind. The word balloons over his name. Fennec. I love his accent from Ireland. And he goes through it and not only talks about it, gives it ups and downs on his viewpoints. And then, of course, underneath you can comment below. But then he gets into the Cretaceous observation, he calls it, where he gets into all the Easter eggs that they've dropped, and some of them are real obscure, and some of them are quite. He does that. They do that with all the Star Trek shows that are current. So when what's the next one up? Lower Decks. He does it with that as well, and that one is crazy. But they're also trying to get 300,000 subscribers. So we do what, about 4,000 to 6,000? Go over
around 4.
Okay, go over and like them. Get another bump. I'd love to see a bump of $4,000, and then we could just say, hey, that was us. Listen to us because we'll talk Star Trek comics for you guys. So that's a lot of fun. Reading. Did I talk about Injustice?
Yes.
Okay, I just picked up. I was out geeking today, and I picked up, I believe, Injustice Year 1, the deluxe collection. So if I can't have my omnibus, I'll have it that way. Speaking of omnibus, I reread Animal Man by Grant Morrison. Chaz Tro did a lot of the art, local creator. And like everything, I remember the high points. I forget so much of it. It's, again, if you've never read this, just wonderful. And next up for me, I'm going to pull down the Doom Patrol that Grant did and go with that. So we don't normally talk about conventions much anymore just because there were so many of them coming and it just was too fast and furious. But it is going to be expensive the next couple of weeks for me because there are a lot of conventions coming up. And I'm just going to shout them out this one time. First of all, let's see, I want to make sure when this podcast drops, it'll still be time for you to go to, there's a comic book show in Madison, Wisconsin. It's at the Hawthorne Suites, Saturday, 24th. If you go, let us know, check it out. I work and I won't be able to join either the 3rd annual South Minneapolis comic book crawl, which will happen on the same day in the Twin Cities. You just go to their website or their Facebook, and they'll tell you which comic shops are involved with it. It just sounds like a blast. And again, if I was free, and I think you said you're free that day, Cory, I got to work. That would be a lot of fun. Toy Posse, Minnesota Toy Posse is doing one on the 25th at the Eagles 34 in Minneapolis or Bloomington. You know, it's one of those places. So that's always a fun place to go. Our buddy Chris Anderson, who if we can ever corral him, would be awesome to have on this podcast. His show out at the Woodbury is going to be at the Valley Creek Mall on Saturday, July 22nd. Remember the old MCBF? I shouldn't say this. They've rebranded themselves as KEAKK, and they're doing a crazy little comic book show on Saturday, August 19th at the Mermaid Entertainment Center in Mounds View again. So they'll be doing it. I'll talk about this next week because I know Chris is gone for the weekend. She went out to go visit my daughter just to get away and take it easy. But I'm free on Saturday, and I'm going to take a trek down to Bloomington, or not Bloomington, Rochester, because there's a place, Midwest Vintage Toys, I've been dying to visit. And before I go, there is a garage sale in Oakdale. Tom Nigan's he's releasing his book. And let's see if I can see. Let's see. Building Remembers for Recollection welcomes you to join us for Juneteenth, a freedom celebration. This will be in the past, but they're releasing the comic book launch of Hate Stings. Writer James Curry and Keith Champagne and Tom Nigan will sign autographs. And I'm hoping to get there. And if I can find my recording thing, maybe I'll get a little MP3 blurb for us to listen to. And to find out, Minnesota Con happened 3 weekends ago as this podcast drops. All the news that was happening, good and bad, kind of put that all by the wayside because I had people commenting on the record, off the record about the con. I figured we'd do a quick reaction to it. But I wanted to mention it because they're probably going to show up again. Don't confuse them with the Twin Cities Con because they're a different group. And people that went had a great time. The dealers seemed to do okay. Traffic was okay. There weren't really big lines to go see the guests. So not necessarily heavily sparsely attended. It could be because Minneapolis, St. Paul area has been really finicky when it comes to celebrity cons versus comic shows. You know, most of the guys charge $5 to $12 to $15 to get in, and these guys want $35 to $70 for the weekend. Not to mention you're paying for stuff. They also ran late to like 8 p.m. where most people left by 5. So again, growing pains, things like that. But I hope they come back. I know, you know, I'm on a signing kick, and Jonathan Frakes was there from Star Trek, which would have been great. And one guy had him sign like the old Playmates Enterprise toy for him. And I thought, oh
cool.
I've got Frakes autograph comics or photo comics sitting down in my collection. Other than the fact I couldn't get off work, I ended up going I mean, I'm just thinking when I see these cons coming again, I'm going to have to just pull these comics out of my collection and try to go get a signature, because that would be kind of fun. And then hopefully you get a picture of them, posing with you, because that's what this guy did. So everybody seemed to have a good time that went there. Again, kind of an odd time. Minnesota's funky on pricing. It was a gorgeous weekend in between the two bouts of haze we had from Canadian forest fires. And the only other comment I got from someone is like, there's a lot of freaking Comic Cons going on around here. And like I said, I touched on the one in Madison. Tim from Granite City's gone almost every freaking weekend this summer going to shows. I don't know where all the money's coming from. And of course, prices are dropping. So a lot of guys who aren't doing good are the ones who still had COVID pricing on their stuff. And people are sort of realizing, yeah, you got a lot when people were bored and sitting at home. But now, yeah, maybe not. So yeah, I didn't even talk about. I went out geeking today and stopped over at Most Wanted Comics. I bought another short box of comics, Cory. This time just $2 books.
Oh.
And I was real tempted. They had a Star Trek #1 gold key, and it was the type I like, where the faces are good. And it's one of those books that's being priced out of the stratosphere right now, because I think people are. First of all, it's a terrible book. It's gold key Star Trek. Ugh. But it is Star Trek. It's got a gorgeous photo cover. And it was of the era. Who the hell cared? Nobody knew Star Trek was going to go. The comic lasted longer than the damn show did. But they're wrong now, because I was talking to the dealer and I was saying, yeah, I think Star Trek's got a revival now, because not only listen to me, I was geeking on about Star Trek earlier, and IDW is getting good press for their Star Trek books in the geek media, because they're saying, oh yeah, Ben Sisko came back in this book, and people I'd love to see the sale numbers on these, if it matters or not, but any mention is a good mention. Cory, what you geeking on?
Comic wise, they've announced officially, by the way,
Ooh.
We're getting a new Ultimate Universe from Jonathan Hickman.
Okay, yeah, lost me at Universe. You got me at Hickman.
Well, the Ultimate Universe, I thought for the most part was good. And then Jonathan Hickman did some stuff toward the end that, if you go back, it's one of those things where he's planting seeds, not knowing if they will ever pay off. But as you read it, it's like, oh, wow, he's planting seeds for Secret Wars. And this is his first comic he ever did. And it's a Ultimates comic. Weird. So he is going to be creating a new Ultimate Universe for Marvel. That's all I needed to know. There are some creators who, you know what? That's all I need. I'm there. I'm there in a heartbeat. And he's one of them. I am reading, it's not an epic collection, but it may as well be, and that is the Avengers Mantis story. And while the story itself is incredibly mediocre, and if you want, I can go into detail as to why it is a really messed up story. And it's good that they've erased her history. But as I'm reading it, I will always have a soft spot in my heart for 70s Marvel, because it's so clear Steve Englehart just was throwing shit at the wall, had no idea where he was going with any of it. To the point where when they write Mantis out of the book, Vision and Scarlet Witch get married by Immortus, who's also marrying Mantis and a sentient tree. Yes, this was Giant Size Avengers #3. It's just so batshit crazy.
And if I recall right, didn't they get married in a double ceremony with Swordsman and somebody?
Swordsman's body was being used by the sentient tree.
Because I think wasn't
because he was dead.
attacking somewhere, so Doctor Strange had to deal with that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. See, I remember some of it.
Oh, my internet is about 3 times as fast as it was 2 weeks ago because I got an email saying, "Hey, repairman's going to come out to your house." I was like, "Okay, why?" And they wouldn't tell me, and it was like, "Okay, you're showing up in the middle of my work day. Please don't mess with the internet." The guy showed up, came in, and said, "Yeah, I found the problem with why your internet speed's so slow. It's so slow." And he showed me, they tested, and it's like I'm only getting a third of the internet speed I was supposed to get. So, and what it was, it's the wires had gotten crimped over the years, and a couple of the relays were old, too old for fast speeds to go through. Now, the good thing is it only took about a half hour. But now my internet is super blazing fast. And I just want to tell people that if you have Comcast internet and cable, your cable comes through the internet. It's all streaming now. Okay? Because he said, yeah, what it is, we test this. Your streaming first goes through to your cable box, then it goes over to your modem. I did not know any of that. And then the last thing I'm geeking on, tomorrow is Box Day.
Box Day.
And I haven't caught up on the stuff I have already. But, oh, man. You see, you don't look at what's coming.
No, I like it to be a surprise.
I look at what's coming. Because, first off, I want to make sure that I didn't miss something and they didn't miss something. So, in my box tomorrow, an issue of Alter Ego and back issue, the Captain Marvel by Kelly Thompson omnibus, the Cliffhanger Cinematic Superheroes of Serials from Tomorrow's, see Loki God of Stories omnibus, Myth Adventures Collected, the Sergeant Fury collection, all will be showing up at my doorstep tomorrow. And after I write up AEW Rampage, I don't have anything to do Friday night but sit there and read funny books. And is there anything better in the world? No, there's not. Believe it or not, kids, you've listened to us blather on about funny books for an hour and a half.
Ooh, down from an hour last week.
No, we're at 2 hours. Ah, well. And as we say every week, the comic we like the least, we still like better than the comic that you like the most. Joe?
Never play drums in a canyon with echoes, because there will be serious repercussions. That obviously was not from the Groovy book. But there's only one thing left to do. Hit my music.